Increasingly, consumers are demanding not just locally grown vegetables, milk, and meat, but locally grown grains. As a result, for the first time in decades, farmers in the Northeast are growing substantial acreages of grain for human food, including wheat, barley, rye, and such specialty grains as spelt and emmer. This raw material can be processed into a multitude of products, creating an opportunity for the development of a vibrant community of grain processing enterprises. When bread, wheat, and other food grains stopped being grown in the Northeast, grain processing know-how and infrastructure also disappeared.
There was a big abandonment of farmers to the Ohio Valley and westward. That part of the food system was lost. Now, this renaissance in the Northeast is bringing new lifeblood to the food system and the viability of producing grains for human consumption.
Fortunately, pioneering grain processing enterprises have begun to spring up across our region. These entrepreneurs are not only redeveloping needed skills and infrastructure, but are willing to share their stories and insight with others.
My name is Joel Steigman. We started Small Valley Milling, where we process our grain that we raise on the farm. We started going organic in about 1999, and we were looking for some value-added grains. Well, we used to raise wheat, and then we heard about this value-added spelt. Spelt's pretty tough. I'd say it's more favorable than wheat. Other than the dehulling part, it's easier to grow. The flavor is sweeter, nuttier. You can eat it in flour, whole or white. You can use it for rice. Emmer is the precursor to durum wheat. You can use this in pasta, soak it and use it like rice. You can mill it for flour or eat it for cereal. We got into dehulling spelt to make it saleable. That's when we bought that Ross Kemp oat dehuller. We outgrew the oat dehuller, and then we got an impact dehuller. That's what we use today. On the right hand side you'll see spelt that's come from the combine. You can see that part of it's been dehulled when it went through the machine, and the balance needs to be dehulled. And when it goes through the machine, it knocks out these kernels on an impact wheel, and that's what it looks like on the left hand side when it's dehulled. The reason we decided to go into the milling business was the same reason we got into the spelt dehulling thing. It's a value added.
We try to evolve the business as our financial situation allowed.
The problem is with a dehuller is that's just one piece of equipment. And since we had the dehuller, we've had to get about 10 other pieces. The main problem was once you borrow that kind of money, how are you going to generate that much business that you can afford to make the payments? So we went in it another way and started buying used equipment, just worked into it gradually. We've been adding equipment since 2000, which would be about 12 years to get what we are, and we still aren't done.
My name is Sharon Burns Leader, and I'm the co-owner of Bread Alone Bakery. Our spelt we buy from Joel at Small Valley Milling. I know that I could call them up tomorrow and go visit them, which that means a lot to me. When we first started making spelt bread with Small Valley, our customers who have digestive issues with wheat, even they loved the bread. It's very nice flavor. It's got a sweet, earthy crumb. Their product is really consistent.
My name's Andrea Stanley. I am the co-owner of Valley Malt with my husband Christian. We started Valley Malt in 2010 with the idea of trying to bring the malt house back to the community.
We just wanted to see grains grown here in Massachusetts locally.
We wanted to incorporate some of those local grains into beers that we were home brewing.
We started talking with brewers and they're like, we don't brew with grains, we brew with malts. You can't have your grains malted anywhere on the East Coast. We figured because we couldn't find anywhere to malt the grains locally that maybe we were on to something.
For us to come upon this missing link and realize that we could make that contribution was really appealing to us.
We didn't know anything about malting. I mean, we didn't even know where malt came from when we first started. I'm a mechanical engineer, that's been my background, and so I'm like, yeah, we can figure this out. It's just a process. The malting process is basically breaking down the large starch molecules in the grain so that they're easily converted in the mashing stage of brewing. I came up with a concept what a malt vessel would look like. We just started malting it in our kitchen. We knew we wanted to develop this into something bigger. We had developed an initial prototype system, and then we had kind of a crossroads where we could say, is this something we really want to do, or do we want to stop at this point? Andrea had basically signed on with some farmers to grow grains for us. We were able to get some financing. We signed that paper, and at that point we were like, okay, we're in it now. Like, we have to pursue this.
From a brewing perspective, I've been brewing for 20 years, and it was great to have somebody say, would you like to have this special small batch malt that you've never heard of that I smoked myself? I think when you're getting malt on this level that is done by a family just up the interstate from here, it highlights the freshness of the grain. And because when something's fresh, you're going to taste more of it, more character of it, more roundness, or whatever the character happens to be. That's going to be more evident in the finished product. And that's what we get from Andrea's grain.
My name is Don Lewis. I've got the Wild Hive Community Grain Project in Clinton Corners, New York, operating a sustainable flour mill. I decided to go into the milling because it had to be done. There was no resources. The principle has always been the same. The grain is fed into the machine and released in the center of the stones. In stone milling, you retain the nutrient density from the germ in the flour. In commodity mill production, they take the bran off the outside, there's flavor. The germ itself is flavor, and the wheat starts out with flavor, and it's kind of stripped of that. We produce a couple of standardized flours. We also make special blends. These special blends are productions that have occurred because of the demand of these regional style bakers.
Don Lewis from Wild Hive Farms was actually one of our first American partners. They really liked what Don was doing, his mission to bring back local grains to be used in commercial bakeries in ways that has not been done in this area in a very long time. We're using Don's grains and flour here in the bakery, but we also use his polenta at our vegetable restaurant. We've even brewed beer with chops made from the same hard red wheat that we use, that's used in our rustic bread. We've worked more and more of his products into different parts of the store.
Right now, their usage is close to 100 tons of flour a year. 1,000 loaves a day, I think, go through this bakery. It's exciting for me.
Being the grower, the farmer, the processor, the marketer, shipper, it's a lot for one family to do and to do well.
There was nobody around when we started.
In the beginning, where this building, everything sits here, there was only a wooden granary and a corn crib.
It's been a challenge to try to find out how to lay the plant out or how to lay the machines out. It's a lot more complex than just putting one machine on a concrete floor and running some grain through it.
It's just crazy, all the stuff that you don't even think about that all of a sudden you need.
You don't realize how you're going to really have to stretch yourself to learn so many different things. And because there isn't really a school to go to learn how to micro malt, you really have to be creative and resourceful to find that information that you need.
There's always somebody that needs to kind of get things moving, and we weren't getting the momentum we necessarily wanted to see, so we kind of wanted to get some momentum of our own going and kind of see what would happen around us.
When we first started this grain project, it was over a dozen years ago. There was not a consumer base waiting to hear what you have to say about local grains. These stone mills that we're using, they're the essence of the production, and learning how to work on these machines, learning how to mill them, has been a tremendous hurdle. There was no one there to teach me. I made a lot of poor flour in the beginning.
I hadn't worked off the farm for maybe 20 years. By doing all the steps that we're doing, from raising the grain and dehulling it, and then milling it to flour, and then selling the flour to the end consumer, it's make the farm profitable.
Things always go wrong, and you feel really strongly about what you're doing, so you just keep pushing along because you also feel that support from everybody that is saying to you what you're doing is so exciting.
One of the best things about being here is getting some of this bread. This is one of my favorites, or amongst my favorites. It's got a tremendous crust to it and a really great crumb. You know, it's almost like smelling the field.
The diversity of local grains in the food system is tremendous now. I think the future is just really awesome.
My name is Joel Elder. I'm the chief distiller at Tuttletown Spirits. So as much as possible, all of our spirits are made from local products and very local, within just a few miles of the distillery here. There has been a tremendous upswing in the number of distilleries just in New York. All of those people are getting their raw materials from local agriculture. We've used triticale, spelt, wheat, rye, different variants on barley, things that give our whiskey a better flavor or character.
My name is Doug Michael, and I'm the founder of Columbia County Bread and Granola. We specialize in baking 100% sprouted whole grain breads. The sprouting process, it's an ancient process, and it's really a pre-industrial process. In searching out recipes, generally speaking, there was very little information about sprouted breads. All the recipes talked about adding like 1 cup of sprouted grain to maybe 4 or 5 cups of flour. I wanted to reverse that process. We love it when people come to us at the markets and say, well, I can't really eat bread. And we'll give them, take a loaf home and just see what happens. And we'll hear back from them if they can eat this bread. We think the future of bread is in sprouting.
The appeal of growing something different, having it be a crop that can be used in rotation on a farm, and I guess the appeal of it that it's going to go into a beer that everybody loves to drink. It's amazing how many farmers now are willing to grow grain for us.
We think that the process we developed here is going to catch on, and it's going to spread.
Just in the past year, I've had at least 4 growers approach us that were either interested in or were actively growing heirloom varieties of grains.
The biggest thing is you want to put out the best quality product that you possibly can, even if it costs you a little bit more, because you're going to gain business in the end.
Cheers.
One of the things that was such a highlight for me was listening to the brewers talk about how unique and aromatic and delicious the malts were that they were getting from Valley Malt, which for me was just like, oh good, we're not just local, but we're good.
I get excited just when the whole concept comes full circle right here like this. This is the real deal.